Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
Welcome back to Options Insider Radio. Our next guest is another repeat offender on the show, though it has been a while since he's been on. This is one of the reasons why we love the Options Industry Conference every year, because it gives us a chance to reconnect with a lot of people that we haven't seen in a while. And our next guest is Henry Schwartz. He's the founder and president of Trade Alert. Henry, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, since it has been, probably at least a year since the last time you were on, we obviously have quite a few new people out there listening to the show saying, what is Trade Alert? So why don't we start with a quick rundown of what it is that you do over at Trade Alert?
Sure. We do one thing, and that's we focus on option order flow analytics. So helping people see what's going on in the option markets in terms of the order flow, what people are trading and how they're trading it. Things like unusual volume, aggressive bullish volume in front of earnings, that kind of stuff is what we focus on. And there's a lot of data and a lot of ways to slice and dice it, and that's what we do.
It's very fertile ground to play in these days. Seems like everyone in the option space wants to know about unusual activity. In fact, you've been one of our core contributors on the Options Insider for a long time, since we launched with some of our earliest unusual activity content. It's great content because it really hits all different core aspects of the options market. You know, everyone likes it, from basic retail to high-end retail to institutional. Everyone wants to know what's going on in the market right now. You know, other types of things are segmented towards different types of audiences, but anything activity related usually seems to hit a very broad spectrum of the options audience.
Right. Well, it's also a very it's a simple enough concept to look at a baseline volume level and say, okay, TiVo normally trades 7,000 contracts a day, but today it traded 20,000, and that's, we have the expertise to kind of dig into it, and our systems can find it. And with a little bit of analysis, you can say, what is it? Is it put buyers? Is it a complex spread? Was it closing? Was it opening? There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but you can kind of get your arms around it if you know what you're doing, and that's people do like it. You're right.
One of the things I like about the Trade Alert service, and whenever I'm playing around with your platform, is I think you're probably one of the earlier ones to do this, which is showing how the flow is leaning towards a bit of the ask and then color coding it accordingly. Quick little visual snapshot so you can kind of see in yourself, see how people are leaning towards the offer, leaning towards the bid, and you can then infer from people are selling or buying. It's a little quick visual montage that you can kind of see really quickly what people are up to in certain whatever underlying you're looking at.
Right. Well, it's funny that goes back to, I started on the CBOE floor for Hull Trading at the very beginning of people having screens in the pits, and the way things worked there were you'd have a theoretical value, and it would turn green if you were supposed to buy it, and it would turn red if you're supposed to sell it. So buy it in my brain since I was about 20 years old was buy green, sell red. Buy green, sell red.
That sounds like the old Timber Hill boxes as well, where they would light up and then they would dance to the tune of the box.
Our screens were right next to Timber's screens.
Really?
Yeah. So,
yeah, that's funny. I didn't know you were with Hull back in the day. It seems like they had quite the long tendrils in the options business. Yeah,
between Hull and O'Connor and CRT, that's everybody out there.
Yeah,
almost.
Pretty much. So we're talking obviously about market makers and market making background. Who is the core audience for this? Is it still a prop shop guy? Is it the former market maker? Is it the buy-side institutional guy? Or who are you going after with the core Trade Alert audience?
Our institutional product is called Option Alert, and it's alerts in those flow analytics. And it's really a very good fit for sell side. It helps sales traders get their hands around the order flow, quickly get to their customer and say, hey, I just saw somebody buy, a whole bunch of downside puts in, Goldman or a bunch of put spreads the morning that Goldman sold off. Buy side, we have a little bit of penetration. It's actually, we don't really focus on that segment. It really seems to be a better fit for the sell side. And then we have plenty of traders as well, and prop traders, and it's our system. It's not really doing anything that is that revolutionary, but it's something that if you don't have kind of the scale of serving hundreds of users, it doesn't get a lot of attention. Traders are usually putting a lot of effort into perfecting the way they model vol, or they manage risk, or they auto hedge gamma, and a lot of exciting things like that. And order flow analysis usually ends up at the bottom of the list. And if they do it at all, they don't put a lot of resources to it. We do have plans for a more active retail service. We actually, in our retail blog side of our business, which is whatstrading.com, we actually recently launched a little order flow widget, basically, that gives users some interactive ways to poke and say, okay, what's the flow look like in Apple today? What kind of commentary have we put out? So, our primary delivery mechanism is actually AOL Instant Messenger, which is heavily used in the institutional world, and AOL has 20 million users on that network, and we can theoretically get to all of them. I think it's probably a relatively small percentage that actually, might be a good fit, but the numbers are there. So if we can, potentially hit 10,000, 30,000, 50,000 people with a service that is useful to them, we'll play around and see what we can come up with there.
I imagine it'd probably be an issue also of pricing, because obviously these people aren't going to come in and pay $10,000 for the software suite, but they can pay somewhere, in the order of a few hundred for something that would benefit their trading.
Right, and that kind of that preserves the value that the institutional broker or sales trader can add, because they have some information coming from other sources. So we'll definitely have something for a retail audience to play with, probably within a year.
You mentioned the What's Trading. I want to hit on that a little bit too. That's kind of been your foray into the blog/content world. So I'm curious, how is that going? And tell the listeners a little bit more about What's Trading, what it actually is. I mean, you can kind of get a little more into detail about what you guys do over there and who writes that content for you.
Sure. Well, Fred Ruffy, who is an excellent writer. I would call him an analyst, except we're not a broker-dealer, so he can't be an analyst. But he actually puts out a heavy amount of content that is routed to our institutional users, and then at the same time, basically we expand on it a bit and reuse it in that whatstrading.com site, which is most of the retail doesn't really need to see each trade coming across as it trades. Institutionals love that. With retail, we can expand on an idea and say, okay, well, here's a trade, here's the break even, here's what the possible motivation is, here's the amount of money that was invested in this trade, and then in addition to Fred's content, we actually have some nice auto content, is what I call it. Basically, we dig through our database of every single trade in real time, and we can put up some great snapshots of, here's the most active stocks in biotech today. Here's the most bearish looking trades in financials today. So there's we basically interleave Fred's content, which is handwritten, with some nice machine generated content that's actually very relevant. And if I put enough work into it, I could probably make it sound like we had another reporter. But
now that's a subscription site, correct?
Right. We actually open up about 10% of the stories we open up for free. And then 90% of the content is for premium members who pay us a monthly $79 a month, and if it helps their trading, they stick around.
No, I have to admit, I am constantly impressed with the just the fire hose of content that Fred puts out on a daily basis. As someone who has a couple content businesses and who's constantly being pulled in multiple different directions, I can empathize with how difficult it is to crank out quality options content on a regular basis. And Fred just is a machine. I don't know how he does it. He must never sleep. The volume of content that comes out of that man. Maybe you just cracked a whip on him quite a bit. I don't know.
No, he amazes me. Sometimes he'll post two well-developed stories within 30 seconds of each other. I'm like, how do you? You can't possibly write one. He
has it ready, copy and paste. He just changes the ticker symbols.
He works on 4 at a time and digs through our data, digs through a few other sources of data, and he knows the business. He knows what flow can mean. A lot of the complex strategies, he's good at it, and it's great stuff.
Yeah, we love seeing his stuff when it comes up on the site. Our readers love it, and we love the volume that he can generate on a regular basis. It's truly impressive. Now, let's talk also a little bit going back to the main Trade Alert site. Obviously, it's been probably well over a year since you were last on the show, so I'm sure you've had just a bevy of updates and feature upgrades since the last time you were here. So give us some of the bullet points,
sure,
the big hits.
A couple things we just released in the last few weeks. Actually, we crammed to get finished before the show, so we could show them off here. One of them is we've actually launched an order flow menu for single option contracts. So we started out focusing on sector activity and then single stock activity. So you can say, okay, well, in Google today, the 250 calls in May were the most active. We now actually dig. The users have the ability to dig all the way down to the May 250 call level, get a menu of flow dynamics, not only the biggest trades, the side of market summary, but we actually provide a real-time histogram of price, volume per price, and volume per implied vol. So when you see, okay, well, 30,000 of these calls traded today, and they traded in dribs and drabs, and there's a block of 10,000 and a bunch of 500 lots, we actually break that out. So you can say, wow, half of them traded at 50 cents, and then you have a bunch of them trading at 47 cents, and we even calculate the VWAP so that you can say, well, 60,000 traded today, and the average, the VWAP was 38 cents. And then you can look at the exact same data in terms of implied volatility traded. And what's interesting is, the same price can represent, different prices can represent the same implied vol as the stock's wiggling around. So you find a distribution in the implied vol that's much tighter, and you can say, well, yeah, it all traded around 47 vol. So that was a big release last week.
That's an impressive level of granularity to get down to on like the strike and series level and be able to pull up vol and histogram, that sort of thing on individual options.
It completes the whole kind of spectrum for us because with our system you can say, look, I want to know what's going on in ETFs. And you can look at the flow menu for the ETF grouping. And then you can say, okay, well, you know what, let me see what's going on in Qs. And you look at the flow on Qs, and you say, okay, well, the most active is this strike or that strike. And now you can say, okay, well, let me look at that strike. So you really zoom in from a high level to you have the ability to zoom in all the way down to this one contract and say, okay, let me see every trade in this thing. And you can get it out of the system. So that was a big release. And the other thing we've started doing is we're actually doing Vega bucketing calculations, which for institutional traders, a lot of them think in terms of volatility in Vega. That's a lot of guys will say, "Oh, I trade Vega."
Yeah,
they really
that's
don't.
their language.
Trading delta is not something they actually are doing on purpose. It's kind of you have no choice. But what they really, when I traded indexes, we'd run a Vega book. You're short. Usually we were short because that's kind of the natural position for a trading desk. But we'd be short $1 million of net Vega in an index. And what we're doing now in the option alert product, because we're crunching every single trade and running the Greeks on every single trade, we can sum up the Vega trading for any product for any term. So you can say, oh, let's look at SPX. How much Vega traded today? Say, okay, well, $1.5 million of Vega traded. And then you can actually say, well, how much traded in Jan of 2012? And look at that. And so the amount of Vega trading in conjunction with kind of what the vol has done becomes a very useful piece of information because, like I said, traders tend to put a ton of work into fitting skew and doing really smart things with the volatilities they're using to run their prices. But to be able to say, oh, by the way, you saw vol get crushed in Jan of 2012 in Citigroup today, and we actually quantify and say, well, by the way, $700,000 of Vega traded and 51% of it traded bid side. And so it adds a lot of information to what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that your average sell side guy would be very interested in that level of granularity they can kind of dig into. Now, I'm kind of curious, maybe looking out a few years, what you kind of envision for maybe the end game for Trade Alert. It's a great standalone service, but also looks like it might fit in well with a lot of the different large platforms and providers I see out at these different shows. And is that something you ever considered, maybe rolling it into a much larger platform where the Trade Alert, Option Alert can be one component of all the different offerings that they have?
We are. It's a couple things that I see happening. One is I actually see people beginning to integrate IMs or the stream of content from our IM, but from other IMs as well, into in-house systems. So you're seeing people basically route in the institutional space all of their IM conversations through some sort of smart process that's going to say, oh, here's a trade in IBM, that should go to Mike because he trades IBM. So people are doing that, and people are really taking it further and saying, okay, well, let's see if it's a show in the IBM June 100 calls, we have a theoretical value on that. So we can pre-evaluate this show, and if it looks like it's a trade that we should make based on our value, it can flash, or a siren can go off, and that's only one step away from auto trading,
yes.
Basically. With our content, we have an API to deliver the same kind of content, and even some more dynamic content to users. So we actually are starting to see some traction in integrating some of these option order flow dynamics into in-house platforms. And what's pretty exciting about that is, if you think about John Wirtz mentioned, Merrill has 20,000 financial advisors. Some of them know about options. Some of them don't.
99.9% do not, unfortunately.
Right. But some of the dynamics that you can pull out of the option markets that we pull out, are things like heavy activity, heavy directional activity, volatility direction, and that kind of stuff actually might be an awesome addition to somebody's in-house platform. So that if a broker in LA has a customer asking about Apple, he could say, well, the stock's here, but the option activity is very heavy and concentrated in the out of the money calls. Might be a good time to overwrite. So, he doesn't have to know about every single trade in Apple, but with our data and the way that we slice and dice and now disseminate those flow metrics, you can very accurately depict what's going on, which becomes a very good tool for brokers and advisors to actually maybe dabble a little bit and say, something's going on in the options. Let's look at it and try to figure it out.
You would definitely not be the only one right now who's trying to find out some way to penetrate into that broker/advisor space. That seems to be the hot area right now. I mean, I know OIC has an enormous initiative they're putting forward, going after financial advisors specifically, and a lot of other firms are trying to figure out ways, because they still are, like we said, they're such an untapped market out there for options and derivatives. I mean, these guys on paper make a lot of sense. They're mostly long-only managers. They should be at the very least writing calls and buying puts on some of these portfolios they're managing, and they're not even doing that. So maybe a product like yours could incentivize them to come over to the dark side, so to speak.
Well, that's true. And this speaker today also, he's mentioned in the social marketing talk that you have kind of a video game generation growing up, and that actually I joked to Chris Monaco from the OIC. I said, so the next Precise workstation can run on the Wii. But there really are some very dynamic images you can come up with from options flow, things that speedometers and dashboard kind of concepts. So I do think without turning it really into a game, you can really use a lot of those the things people are used to. These gamers are used to really taking in a lot of information, visually. And I can definitely see the application to a nice broker front end, where you can just glance at something and see some sort of dynamic heat map of where what sector is hot and what does it look like it's doing, and be able to drill right in there and say, okay, so in healthcare you got 3 names that are seeing a lot of option activity, and just you drill right all the way down and find a trade to do or take a closer look.
I can see it right now. Trade Alert on the Xbox. The little kids are out there playing the Trade Alert game. That would be something.
You could probably do it, right? It's online gaming. Yeah. Well, we always used to joke when I was at Hull, and we did a lot of work on volatility curves and term structure and 3D. You end up with a 3D surface, and then we saw they came out with 3D glasses. We're like, you could design a system where you could basically kind of surf through that curve, and then you see a high high point, which is a bid, and you just whack it, and all of a sudden it becomes something you can just virtual reality.
It's almost like Minority
trading.
Report-esque, where you're manipulating it, and
I mean, why not though? I mean, it's easier than using a keyboard to tweak your vols around. You should just be able to kind of virtually touch it. And
that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to the Xbox and 3D versions of Trade Alert coming soon. You heard it here first.
We're going to start on that now.
As soon as you leave, that's the next development priority.
A big potential market.
Well, Henry, that's about all I have for you today, unless there's something that you would like to add.
No, I think you do a great job and provide a very, very good service and really serve an institutional and sophisticated customer.
Those markets are blending at a very rapid pace these days.
That's true.
Well, Henry, thanks a lot for coming on. I'm glad we can finally get you on. We'll have to do it more frequently than once every year and a half. And we'll look forward to seeing what's coming up next with Trade Alert and with What's Trading.
Thank you very much.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Options Insider Radio.
be sure to visit www.theoptionsinsider.com for more episodes of this program, as well as breaking news from the options market, the latest articles and analysis from options experts, a wide variety of options education, and of course our discussion center where you can share your questions, comments, and insights with your fellow Options Insider users. While you're there, be sure to register for our monthly email newsletter, as well as our free email alert system. Our email alert system makes it even easier to stay up to date on the latest content from theoptionsinsider.com. Thanks again for listening. My name is Mark Longo, and I'll see you next time on Options Insider Radio.
Options Insider Radio was created by Mark Longo and produced by Gene Crotty. Options Insider Radio is a production of the Options Insider Incorporated, all rights reserved.